This is new. I shouldn't laugh. But, nothing's ever perfect. So, especially her life. But, things could be better. So she's profoundly disappointed in Valamir, as we noticed last week. He has a little problem. So, chapter 17. The morning air was frigid. The sky was deep blue and crisp with clouds. Astride his black stallion, Attila waited for Helena to acknowledge his presence. His horse tossed its head, his mouth opening against the pressure of the Hun applied to its bit. She broke the tension. Attila. His sharp eyes scrutinized her, searching for damage. He was not alone, but was surrounded by a semicircle of unfamiliar Hunnic horsemen. Valamir, Thudamir, and Karatapan were not to be seen. He spoke Greek. I need your expertise with words, Helena. Come with me. No, she said, without pausing to consider whether she had the right to refuse. I must wait for Valamir. Attila scowled. A short laugh followed. He said something in Hunnic to the men. Their scarred faces broke into knowing smiles. He's busy, Helena. He might be a while. Inwardly she winced with pain. When she spoke, her voice was clear and unwavering. I can't be with you in your tent, Attila. Without my husband, it would not be proper. He was quiet. His face was a bland mask. Finally he raised his eyebrow and smiled, but his expression was melancholy. Again she spoke without considering the consequences, her throat dry. Don't pity me. His smile was fleeting. He doesn't deserve your loyalty. Her breath drew inward. His words reached her defenses to their innermost core. She reverted to silence, her only weapon, and stared at him with unflinching eyes. Enough, he said. I'll have my things brought to you. We'll work together in Valamir's tent. We must be outside in plain view. But you're shivering with cold. You look tired, almost as if you've had a bad night. Her eyes flashed, hot with tears. She blinked back. She blinked hard, keeping them at bay. You want trouble between Valamir and me. Why? He looked pleased. That should be evident, he considered, his words speaking slowly. It's good that you speak your mind with me. Never stop. It would be my loss. The wind blew, lifting her hair from her shoulders. Attila's guards watched her, their eyes lively and amused. Though they could not understand Greek, the men knew an argument when they heard one. She studied Attila, not as a Hun, but as a man. You're an enigma, Attila. If you gave the command, your men wouldn't hesitate to cut me down. Your power is absolute. Even Grilius respects it. Yet, you bandy words with me, a woman, as if you really considered what I thought. She hesitated, uncertain whether to continue. His eyes never left her face. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Go on. I think you see me as a key to a door. Where it leads, you don't know. But you have to find out. Always you have to know. Your mind's thirsting for more. I should be frightened of you. I see the cruelty in your face. You don't hide it. But your intellect, so quick to pounce, gives me pause. You have a brilliance that would scorch me if I got too close. If I were wise, I wouldn't talk to you, keeping safe in silence. But I can't. She smiled, suddenly surprised. It's too much fun. His face softened with delight, transforming his ugliness with his charismatic appeal. You are a treasure, Helena. If Valamir doesn't suit you, you come to me. I'll speak to him. As Attila said his name, Helena remembered Valamir's face, blurred from drink, his lips hard in her mouth, and his hands ripping and taking. Attila's voice was like a knife. Did he hurt you? Stunned, she stared at him, hearing his sincerity, and shifted her weight back on her heels. He personified the barbarian ideal, violent and ruthless. Yet he cared. Still, Helena could not allow him the intimacy of a confidant. It's between Valamir and me. Again, you are loyal. His eyes hardened. I'll make him appreciate it. Gratchman hobbled toward them, his face white with pain. Without a qualm, Helena pushed her way through the horses and scolded him. "You should be in bed. You're not well." His pale blue eyes squinted against the sun and swept the Huns. He spoke quietly in Persian. "We're not among friends." Suddenly, Attila, his horse chewing its bit, was upon them. Mounted, he looked down at the servant. His eyes were furious, like black coals. Lena thought of thunder. "You never told us you spoke Persian, Kratapan. Ruglava would never have sold you if he had known." Kratapan lowered his head. His hands clenched his trousers, and Helena wondered what the Huns had done to make him so afraid. Irritated, Attila waved his hands. "You may speak." "I was born in Persia, great lord." "Why didn't you tell us?" "No one asked." Attila gritted his teeth. "You—" Frightened for her friend, Helena interrupted. "He's ill. Leave him alone," she said in Greek. Kratapan's eyes pleaded with her, silently with warning. "Helena, show respect to Lord Attila." Attila's mouth contorted into a snarl. "Go back to sleep, old man. Unlike Valamir, I have no patience with uselessness." His face expressionless, Kratapan bowed from the waist and edged backward to his tent. "Why did you say that?" she asked. "He's a rebel. We could never break him. His presence is an offense, a reminder of failure. You seem to value my spirit. You're a woman. If you were a man, you'd be dangerous and safer dead." His eyes appraised her. "Unless, of course, you'd swear to serve me without question." She flinched. Attila smiled, leaning closer to whisper, and his tone was ingratiating. "Let's not speak of unpleasant matters, Helena. I need your help on my journal. Have someone bring my scroll and quill. Another will make a warm bonfire." "As you wish, Attila." He clapped his hands loudly and spoke imperiously and Hunnic to one guard and then to another. They rode in 2 different directions, stretching their horses into a hard gallop. Filling the missing gaps, the remaining guards tightened their phalanx formation, partially blocking Helena's view of the camp. In the distance, over their horses' backs, she saw a tall, blond man walking towards them. His long legs brought him closer with easy strides. His head was lowered, and his eyes studied the ground. When he looked up at the tent, crowded with Attila's guards, he stopped dead in his tracks. Though Helena was unable to see his face clearly, she recognized Valamir. "He's come back," she whispered to herself. Attila's voice was like a flask filled with rattling stones. "You love him." She kept her focus on Valamir. His pace had become rapid as he approached. But when he neared, Helena averted her eyes and stared at the billowing clouds just above the horizon. Despite her display of nonchalance, her hand clutched the fabric of her dress. Attila remained close. He spoke in Greek. "Valamir! By the gods, you look spent. The men say that you covered 3 women last night." The words sped like arrows into her heart. She looked directly at Valamir, and her face crumpled. For a moment, he held her eyes and then looked away, folding his arms across his chest. Without hesitation, she fled into the solitude of the tent. She crouched by the ashes of the hearth, her head in her hands. Through the leather walls, Helena heard Valamir's angry voice in Greek. "Why did you speak of the others in front of my wife?" Attila's chuckle was malicious. "Maybe she'll look for solace elsewhere. Someone who will appreciate her and treat her gently." Losing control, Valamir shouted, "The hell she will." Attila answered with silence. Afraid for Valamir, Helena held her breath. Attila laughed, the booming sound releasing the tension in her chest. The Hun's next word were a hiss, shredding the air. "You've a right to be angry. After all, she's your wife, but never before has someone come between us." "Attila," Valamir said more quietly, "I trust you with my very being, but by the gods, I wish that I could say the same about you and my wife. You keep coming at her like a moth to the flame." Attila paused. "You are my oldest friend, Valamir. Next time I'll try to remember. Helena doesn't seem to understand how it is for men. The last thing I need is a jealous woman." He laughed. "Perhaps you should come with me for a while. Your wife needs time to forgive you." Valamir cleared his throat. If you want me, send word." Attila laughed. "The gods be with you." Hoofbeats punctuated Attila's departure, but Valamir did not join Helena inside. She forced herself to sit erectly, but her heart was sore with confusion. Time passed slowly. When Valamir entered, he said nothing. She could not meet his eyes. He prepared a simple meal of bread and meat, dividing it into two. His hand shook slightly from the excesses of the prior night. Sitting across from Helena, he set one of the leather plates before her. She shrank from him. "Helena, I'm sorry." His apology released her anger, her darkness calling for revenge, but she would have none of it. Yet she wanted to beat him, hating the fact that her will was trapped in a woman's body and lacked a man's strength. Equally indifferent to the meal, Valamir set his aside. Instead, he built a pyramid of sticks and dry mulch in the cold hearth. From a container behind him, he extracted flint and a small metal rod. Helena watched his finely shaped fingers as they worked with the flint, patiently creating a spark again and again. Finally, the flame caught, igniting the kindling. He smiled. Her eyes grew hot, but she curbed the tears. Attila was at the edges of her thoughts, circling her and watching her like a predator. Valamir, her only protector, had betrayed her. "Talk to me, Helena," he said, looking at her. His eyes were soft, brilliant blue, and his fingertips were pressed together. Her feelings for him lay just below the surface, waiting to snare her. "No," she said. He withdrew into himself and became quiet and still. "I forgot myself," he said. His words hung between them. "Come outside. We need water. Karatapan's not well enough to carry buckets back and forth to the stream." "For Karatapan, then." Valamir picked up 2 buckets and led the way outside. "Wait," he said. In a moment, he emerged from Karatapan's tent with a leather container dangling from his wrist. "Can you manage this one?" She nodded, wishing that the sunlight would not glisten on his hair, streaking it with gold. Side by side, they walked to the stream, noisy with women, washing clothes while they talked. More than one called Valamir by name. He ignored them. "Come upstream with me. The water's cleaner." Moving away from the camp, she followed him along the bank, studying his wide back and broad shoulders. His hair swung past his shoulders and swung gently with his easy gait. Thinking of last night, she studied the ground. After the women's voices had faded in the distance, Valamir sat by the water and dropped his buckets. They rolled haphazardly toward the stream, then came to a rest. Keeping more than an arm's length away from him, Helena remained standing. "Sit, Helena. The sun feels good." She shivered from the cold, but also from the turmoil that raced within her, spiraling with confusion. Finding a large stone several feet away, she sat. As she hugged her knees to her chest, her long dress covered her legs. The sound of rushing water soothed her, acting as a salve to her distress. Streams made the same music the world over, only the tempo varied. Some rushed to find the ocean, others meandered, hushed in their steady flow. Abruptly, Valamir stripped off his tunic, his boots and socks, and his weapons, leaving only his pants. Helena was shocked. "What are you doing?" He shrugged, but his smile was veiled, full of secret meaning. It eluded her, firing her anger, but most of all her shame. "I feel dirty after last night," he simply said. His eyes grave, he turned from her silently and waded into the stream to its deepest spot. He sat, splashing water everywhere, ducking his head, and came up for air without a gasp, spraying water as he shook his hair. Helena thought of a large dog shaking itself dry, but resisted the sudden urge to laugh. Dripping, he returned to the bank. His skin prickled from the cold. He sat beside her, but not so close as to make her wet. He picked up one of his knives. His face was serious as he watched the sunlight reflect on its shining blade. Now looking at her, he spoke quietly. that I hurt you last night? Words would not come. How could she explain the depth of his betrayal? You shamed me. I know, but I don't remember. Did I? Did you rape me? No, but only because I hit you as hard as I could, probably breaking my hand again. Thank you. For what? Stopping me. Do you hate me? She shook her head, feeling trapped by his questions. I don't know. He put his knife in her left hand and gently closed her fingers around its hilt. I owe you a blood price. Mark me as you wish. She dropped the weapon, and it clattered on the stones. My God, Valamir, if I wanted to cut you, I would have last night. His face was an opaque mask, revealing nothing of his feelings. He retrieved the dagger, balancing it delicately in his hand. She felt a chill as if death walked near. Her hand reached his wrist. No, Valamir. Without hesitation, he put the dagger's tip to his chest, over his heart, and sliced his flesh. She pulled at his wrist, trying to stop him, but inexorably he continued to draw some kind of rune, triangular in shape. Blood spilled, marking his progress. And still, she did not let go. Don't do this, Valamir, please. Again, you break my heart. He stopped. This way, I'll never forget what I did. It's enough. You're bleeding everywhere. He looked down and shrugged. Just scratches. They'll heal. Again, the dagger's point was to his chest. Please stop, Valamir, she pleaded. He had hesitated. It's not finished. It must be perfect. It's for you. No, it's not for me. It's for your conscience. I hate what you are doing. It's barbaric. And that's who I am, Helena. A barbarian. That will never change. She released his wrist and turned away, hiding her face. Her tears were silent. The knife idled in his hand. He touched her shoulder and lifted her chin so that his eyes met hers. Helena. Her mouth twisted. His blue eyes were closed, his brow crinkled in a frown, and she was shaking. Forgive me, he said. I can't, not yet. Take forever to stay with me. Her throat ached. And at night, where will you be? Valamir. He kissed her brow. With my wife. Her hand touched his dagger, red with blood. Will you put that away? He wiped it clean on the grass. But the rune is only half done. It's like last night. You started, but in the end, you stopped. Drunk as you were, you did not hit me, but chose to strike the ground. You don't remember? I only remember waking and not seeing you. His cut still oozed red. We need a clean cloth to stop the bleeding, she said. The blood washes the wound. When it stops, we'll go back. His arm wrapped around her, pulling her close, but did not soil her with his blood. In the distance, a bird called. He asked her again, Do you hate me, Helena? She finally told him, No, but you taught me to remember fear. He studied the horizon, his jaw pulsing, and said nothing. Later he pulled his tunic over his head. They returned to camp with buckets sloshing with water. Helena walked beside him, her thoughts in turmoil, but with a lighter heart. So that's chapter 17. So, hey, check out my book, on YouTube if you want, Facebook. Looks like I have to change my YouTube streaming platforms. I don't know, my streaming platform doesn't, it wants YouTube events or something, so I do not know what that is, but I'll figure it out. Hey, tell people about The Phoenix and the Falcon. I would love it if people would buy the book, tell friends, I really want it to be a movie. Just, you gotta put stuff out there. It'd make a great movie, don't you think? So have a good night, have a good week. It's nice weather here in New Jersey, and I hope you're doing okay. Take care. Bye.